या ठिकाणी ज्या व्याख्यानाची ज्या लेक्चरची आपण आतुरतेने वाट पाहत आहात त्यासाठी मी पुणे जिल्ह्याचे सत्र व जिल्हा न्यायाधीश माननीय नावंदर साहेबांना विनंती करतो की आपण या ठिकाणी यावं, मार्गदर्शन करावं.
Vice President Mr. Patil, the team of the Bar Association and my friends, I am so delighted firstly to see you in such a large numbers, but at the same time it is creating somewhat pressure for me. See, the judges are not used to give some speeches or addressing large gatherings, and naturally it creates a little stress, but still I'll try to communicate with each one of you. Firstly, in the remembrance of Advocate Mr. Koshe, I will like to share something. Advocate Mr. Koshe practiced before me in year 2019 and 20. Such a humble, such knowledgeable personality he was, but he never raised his voice. He was so polite all the time. Even if he didn't agree either to the submission of the other side or to the bench, he didn't just burst or never shouted. See the quality he had. A lot of hard work he did. From his cross-examination, I always learnt many things. His cross-examinations were always to the point, and he never missed a point also. Such personality certainly deserves a lot of respect, love, and I bow down to advocacy of Mr. Koshe. His daughter is sitting within us. Certainly, this is a moment which she should cherish. Friends, at Pune, I have an opportunity to deal with many types of cases. Initially, I dealt with civil cases, then I dealt with anti-corruption cases, ITS cases, and then in 2020, I was put into the chamber of Mocha Court. I am thankful for the principal district judge, that then he was, who put me into the guard so that I could learn some aspects of this, maybe called as Draconian law of this era. As we know, earlier we had POTA, we had TADA, and those were repealed. But terrorist activities were going on, organized crime syndicates were very much active, and to control them, there was necessity of some legislation which could be effectively working upon the control of these illegal activities. Indian Penal Code was there, but it was found not sufficient because we were going by the title of the cases, 307, 326, 395, 387, 386, and considering the punishment provided for those offenses, the offenders, the accused were getting bail easily. Maybe it was not, the antecedents of the accused were not that much cared of. And here come this Maharashtra Control of Organized Crime Act. I just prepared some PPT, some slides, so that everyone from you can look it into. Even all of us have the books with us, certainly, as I understand. Whether everyone has a Mocha book with, Barak with himself or herself or not. Because even if you don't have any hard copy, you can very well take out its soft copy from Google right now. And each one of us certainly has a mobile phone, a smartphone. This is the act of only 30 sections, and which may require more than 2 days to discuss, but still I will try to cover it up within 15 to 20 minutes. I will not take certainly much time than our recess period. See, if we go through the title of this act, what word is important therein? What do you feel? Is Organized Crime Act is important, Maharashtra is important, or control is important? The word control controls the act as a whole. Only to control the organized crimes this act is enacted. And how? Let us go to the definition part thereof. See, the basic principle of criminal law is presumption of innocence. Unless proved, nobody should be called as an offender. We call everyone as accused, not an offender. In this act, a little departure is given to this principle. How? We'll see. Definition of continuing unlawful activity. See, continuing unlawful activity is the very basis or genesis of MCOCA. What is called as continuing unlawful activity? If there are cognizable offences, charge sheets of cognizable offences within the period of last 10 years, and how much those should be? More than 1. Why it is not mentioned 2, or why it is not mentioned more than 2? This question must have stuck to our mind when we read this, but hardly we pay attention to. More than 1 means previous one and this one. This is sufficient. So, cognizable offense within the period of last 10 years and more than 1 offenses. But again, the word continuing is somewhat of relevance and importance. If an offense is committed under section 354 earlier, and thereafter the offense under section 384 is committed, whether it can be said to be continuing unlawful activity within the meaning of this section? No, because the offenses are of entirely different nature. So, nature of offense is an important aspect while deciding continuing unlawful activity. Then we go to what is organized crime. The genesis is again continuing unlawful activity. If such activity is done by a particular person singly or jointly, either as a member of the crime syndicate or on behalf of the syndicate. So whether it is necessary that he should be member of the crime syndicate? No, but the offense must be done for or on behalf of the crime syndicate, for the crime syndicate, in the benefit of the crime syndicate. And what should be the object of such offense? To have pecuniary gains, maybe in cash or kind, any other advantage, or promoting insurgency. See, many times we notice that offense is not committed to have some gain, but 2 groups come and fight and Mukka is applied. Here, again we go to the earlier slide. Here the offense is not committed to have pecuniary gains because 2 groups are fighting. There is no economic advantage, you can say, because nobody was getting any money. So, how MCOC can be applied in such a case? But the hidden object of these two fighting gangs is to overcome each other. And for what they are overcoming? They want to establish their supremacy in the particular locality. And why supremacy? And ultimately to have some unlawful gains. And therefore, MCOC can be applied in such circumstances. There are judgments to this effect. One more example, or some instances you have noticed that such joint syndicates are now being formed. One crime syndicates in joint venture with another crime syndicate commits a crime. In such syndicates, the members of the crime syndicates are from different groups. They come together and commit crimes. This is unique type of example. Up till now there is no judgment of higher court on this point, but I am waiting for the same. There are some instances of different crimes where MCOC can be applied. As we know, in cricket betting case, and then for the gangsters, then as we very easily recognize the picture, from the picture, Mulshi pattern, Kashmir Files. So, a variety of crimes can be included to apply MCOCA. It is not that only the local gundas can be booked under this act. There is a special provision under section 10 of MCOC Act that once MCOC Act is applied to a particular accused or group of accused, all their pending cases are stalled because of this provision. Trial of an offense under MCOC Act is given precedence over any other trial, and the other trials of all the accused are kept in abeyance. Why it has been done so? What is the purpose behind this keeping the other cases in abeyance? Because what has to be established by prosecution? Continuing unlawful activity. And how continuing unlawful activity is to be established? By proving previous charge sheets only. Prosecution need not prove previous offences beyond reasonable doubt. That concept is not applicable to MCOC Act. Let us see. There are 4 charge sheets pending against a particular accused and MCOC is applied. Charge sheet is filed. What a smart accused can do? He can get disposed of his previous 4 cases immediately by calling the victims, witnesses, making them hostile, winning the acquittal and coming to the MCOC court. See, my card is clear. So, MCOC be withdrawn. To seal this loophole, to avoid this complication, section 10 is introduced in the Act. As soon as MCOC is applied, the previous trial of the previous cases automatically stops. The only purpose of keeping those cases in abeyance is to facilitate the trial of MCOC Act. Special rules of evidence are being quoted. By these rules, the special court is empowered to take care of the victims, to the witnesses. Protection can be given to them. Even the court can order that trial be conducted in a particular place, even without naming the witness, without calling the witness, without calling the accused. Accused can be kept in jail itself, and from VC the trial can be conducted. The court can frame its own rules. This is the gimmick. This is the importance of this provision. Some presumptions are also given. If an accused is found in possession of some property which he cannot account for, the court should presume that this property he has earned that property out of some illegal activity. He has collected that amount from commission of some crime. This presumption is very important. Thereafter, there is presumption that if anybody is abducted or kidnapped, the court should presume that the person is abducted or kidnapped for ransom, because we always see that it is very difficult to prove the purpose of kidnapping or ransom. Many times kidnapping and ransom can be proved easily, but purpose hardly can be proved. Therefore, this presumption is introduced. There is one unique provision of making the confessions admissible which are given to police officer. Certain rules are provided, safeguards are provided, that the confession should not be recorded by the officer which is below the rank of SP. Some guidelines are issued which are in coherence of section 164 of CRPC. 24 hours time is to be given, certificate is to be appended that the accused had voluntarily given statement, he was given time to rethink, he was explained that if he confess, the confession can be used against him during trial, and so on. The major difference in 164 and 18 MOCA is a recording of confession by the police officer, and it is really very dangerous. On this point, the constitutional validity of this act was challenged. However, the Honorable Supreme Court has held that this is a measure to be used in exceptional circumstances. MCOC Act or provisions of MCOC Act are not of general nature. Those are being framed only to achieve some specific goals, and therefore these provisions are held to be constitutionally valid. Special provisions of remand and bail are there. As we know, in MCOCA, on production of the accused before special court, police custody to the extent of 30 days can be granted. This is of general knowledge. But what is important is that this police custody can be given intermittently till framing of the charges. Not only till filing of the charge sheet, but even after filing of the charge sheet, if the investigating officer is of the opinion that some evidence is important and it can be recovered if I interrogate the accused, he can demand police custody at that stage also. This is exceptional provision. It was earlier available in TADA and now in MOCA. Thereafter comes the period of charge sheet. As we know, in MCOCA, period of charge sheet can be extended from 90 days to 180 days. But it is not automatic. Investigating officer as of right cannot extend the period up to 180 days. He has to seek extension after 90 days every time. The extension application must be filed by public prosecutor. Why public prosecutor? Because public prosecutor is expected to apply his mind before filing application. It is expected on the part of the PP to go through the reasons whether really those exist or not. Then he should file application. Otherwise, he is expected to tell the court boldly that, sir, there are no sufficient reason and I am not making an application. This right, this power is vested with the special PP, and he is expected to adhere to the principles. This question was taken up by Honorable Supreme Court, but in the case of TADA, it was a case of Hiten Thakur in year 2003 or 2004, and in that case it was so discussed that application must be filed by special PP, notice must be issued to the accused, opportunity of hearing must be given, and then the court should pass reasoned order. only extension is granted for 180 days, for 30 days is not sufficient. And if this process is not followed, accused accrues the right to claim bail under section 167(2) of CRPC, that is default bail. So where the role of the defense lawyer comes? The defense lawyer has to meticulously see whether there are reasons to demand extension, whether the application is filed by PP, whether affidavit is furnished by investigating officer, whether notice is issued by the court, whether hearing is given, and whether reasoned order is passed. If any of this piece of chain is missing, the right to bail accrues. So defense lawyer should know all these things. What are the effect of non-compliance? Section 21 of MCOC Act plays key role in the entire act. Here 438 of CRPC is not applicable. No anticipatory bail can be granted in MOCA case. But whether, say, this is a straight statement which can be made. Suppose there is a case in which MCOC Act cannot be applied on the facts, on the face of record. Whether then also the court will deny the bail, anticipatory bail, and will allow detention of the accused. We are in the state of law. Here is the rule of law which is governed. It is not that only because caption of MCOCA is applied, the accused can be kept behind the bars and his liberty is curtailed. So there are only few judgments, but those discuss about this, that if on the face of record, if provisions of MCOC Act cannot be applied to a particular offense, I say offense, then anticipatory bail can be granted to the accused under section 438 of CRPC. While saying this, I repeated the word offense. Why? To whom MCOC Act is applied? Provisions of MCOC Act is applied to accused or to offense? Offense. Many a times, not many a times, every time we hear that, sir, there are no previous antecedents, there are no crimes, and therefore MCOC is not applicable to the accused. We strongly argue. We do listen. But the fact is that provisions of MCOC Act are invoked to the particular offense, not to the particular accused. There are two very beautiful judgments on this point. One is of our High Court in the case of Ube, Sakharam Ube, and second is the latest one in the case of Gauri Lankesh murder case, that is Kavita Lankesh versus State of Karnataka. In both these judgments, this aspect is meticulously dealt with, and it is ruled by the Supreme Court that even if there are no criminal antecedents with a particular accused, it is not that he is immune from applicability of provisions of this act. So friends, please, while putting your case, think twice that if by putting such arguments, if it is ignorance of on your part is shown or what. One important aspect of section 21 is that it has barred grant of bail. No bail can be granted unless it is shown by the accused that he is innocent. In other words, unless there are reasonable grounds to believe that the accused is not guilty of offense. Don't you think that it is very difficult to get bail in MCOCA due to this clause? Yes, it is. Particularly, this provision is mandatory, mandates the court itself that it should be looked into that whether there are reasonable grounds to see that he has not committed the offense. This is negative burden actually. This is departure from the regular criminal law. But there are some reasons for that. This section was also challenged many a times, but its constitutionality has been held to be valid. There is a beautiful judgment on this point of Ranjit Singh Sharma versus State of Maharashtra. It was in Telgi case, which is pending in this court itself. Ranjit Singh Sharma was the Commissioner of Police at that time at Mumbai. He was impleaded as an accused in that case. While dealing with the provision of Section 21(4) of MCOC Act, Honorable Supreme Court has, in beautiful words, observed that there must be, the Section 21(4) must be construed reasonably. It must be so construed that the court is able to maintain a delicate balance between a judgment of acquittal and conviction and an order of granting bail much before commencement of trial. The Supreme Court observed that if the provision is read as it is, then it will be very difficult either to release an accused on bail, or if he is released on bail, then it will be impossible for the prosecution to secure conviction of such an accused. Therefore, what has been guided is that the provision is to be reasonably construed, balance has to be kept, and the court has to decide in what cases bail has to be granted or not. So, some tilt is there in favor of the accused by this judgment. A beautiful judgment, everyone should read it. गुगलवर टाका रणजित सिंग शर्मा, भरपूर सगळ्या याच्यामध्ये ते साईट झालेलं आहे. प्रत्येक याच्या जर्नलमध्ये प्रसिद्ध झालेलं आहे. 7/4/2005 आहे. रणजित सिंग ब्रह्मजीत सिंग शर्मा वर्सेस स्टेट ऑफ महाराष्ट्र. One more aspect the court has to examine while granting the accused on bail in this act, that whether there is any likelihood of committing of an offense in future by the accused. It is also difficult how to see, how to just look into the future, visualize the situation that he will commit an offense or not. For that purpose, the court has to take into account his history. We have to see his biodata, and from the biodata we have to decide what he will be doing by coming out from the jail. So we'll go to further prior approval and sanction. This is also different aspect of the MCOC Act. For invoking MCOC Act in a particular crime, prior approval is required of a police officer who is not below the rank of Deputy General of Police. While giving prior approval, it is expected on the part of this authority to examine the previous offences, nature of offences, and the period of the previous offences, particularly the charge sheets. See, there is prior approval word is used in 23(1), and in 23(2) sanction word is used. The use of these two different words have some definite meaning. Prior approval does not mean deep scrutiny, but the sanction indeed requires deep scrutiny of the record. Therefore, many a times we see that prior approval is given, but sanction is not accorded, and charge sheet is not filed under MCOC Act, and the charge sheet is sent to some other court. Prior approvals and sanctions are given only on the basis of previous charge sheets. Proof of his previous conviction is not required. This is the only law which act upon previous prosecution against a particular person or a crime syndicate. This is really a great departure from the established practice of the criminal law. So what the defense has to see, where the role of the defense lawyer comes here in, what we are expected to see into this. In the cases of anti-corruption cases, what we give importance to sanction. We examine the sanctioning authority, whether he has applied his mind or not. Cross-examination is done on the application of mind for pages and pages. But whether that kind of cross-examination works in this case, this is a kind of objective act on the part of the sanctioning authority. Application of mind is certainly required, but the extent of application of mind required in case of Corruption Act, Prevention of Corruption Act, is not required in MCOC Act. What is expected to be taken into account is the nature of previous offenses, the category and consistency. So what the defense lawyer has to do, the defense lawyer has to look into that file, which many a times the defense lawyers ignore. It is D file submitted along with the charge sheet. Generally 1, 2, 3, 4 files are there. Out of them the last file is of the previous charge sheets. A defense lawyer is expected to go through that file meticulously. What is to be seen? Whether there are previous charge sheets of similar crimes. Secondly, whether the court has taken, respective courts had taken cognizance of those charge sheets. Mere filing of charge sheets is not sufficient, but court must have taken cognizance of those offenses. That has to be looked into. Many times, police just file Xerox copies. Whether Xerox copies can be read in evidence? No, this all we know. Therefore, the defense lawyer has to look it into whether certified copies are filed or not. Next, whether the charge sheets filed on record are of disposed of files, whether the accused are already acquitted from that. Many a times, the police enlist disposed of files. Accused are already acquitted. But what happens? When in MCOC, the accused are generally behind the bars. They are in judicial custody, therefore there is lack of communication or not sufficient instructions are given to the advocates. Therefore they do not know whether he is acquitted from that or not. For that purpose, it is expected on the part of the defense lawyer to do research, to see whether really he is facing that trial or not. So, while dealing with the prior approval and sanction for prosecution, this task is to be undertaken by the defense advocates. Let us now, I have already dealt with some defenses. I have summarized some of the defenses available under MCOC. Firstly, the defense lawyer should examine from the file that whether the particular accused was a member of organized crime syndicate, or whether he had just accidentally came into contact with those accused at the particular point of time and just implicated. And this happened many a times. So, first examination should be of membership of the organized crime syndicate. Then, as we discussed, whether it was a part of continuing unlawful activity of the crime syndicate. Continuing unlawful activity must be of the syndicate and not of the individual. Crime must not have been conducted for the benefit of a single person. Then, whether there was really existence of crime syndicate. This also has to be examined. Then, as we discussed, the approval and sanction. And the most important part is the proof of principal offense. What it means? The offense, principal offense is committed, it is of some, let us see, it is dacoity. 395 offense is registered, and thereafter, during investigation on the basis of previous charge sheets, MCOC is applied. MCOC is applied because of the previous charge sheets, but the principal offense is of 395 IPC. So where we have to work out? Firstly, we have to work out on the principal offense. And the principal offense is the only offense which is to be tried before the court. Previous offenses are not tried before the MCOC court, only previous charge sheets are filed. So our concentration should be, particularly when we cross-examine the witnesses, our concentration should be on the principal offense. Don't be scared about the provisions of MCOC while you are dealing with a case under MCOC. It is not a case of MCOC, I say. It is just a case of the principal offense which you are dealing with. You deal with peacefully. You go with the principal offense, and if you are able to point out to the court that the principal offense itself is not made out, forget MCOC cannot be invoked, nor the accused can be convicted for that. Previously, before about 10 years, 10 years or I say 15 years, two separate charge sheets were filed. One was filed for principal offense, and one used to be filed only for MCOC Act. And the accused was tried for both. See, now we will just explain how it was done. But there was a judgment of Bombay High Court on this point, which guided the courts to try these offenses differently. But in fact, MCOC cannot be said to be different offense. Law thereafter the law got evolved. We have guidelines, we have the case laws on this point, and now we are trying principal offense. And we are studying on the basis of previous charge sheets whether MCOC is proved. What I have said? We are trying principal offense, and we are just studying whether MCOC is made out on the basis of previous charge sheets. So while cross-examining the witnesses, while conducting the trial, the focus of defense lawyer should be on principal offense. See, I have already dealt with the landmark judgments. Prasad Purohit's judgment is also there. And there are many judgments on this point, but I find these more useful, and the entire law is discussed herein. Ranjit Singh Sharma, Govind Sakaram Ube, Kavita Lankesh, and Prasad Purohit. So, I am seeing many diamonds amongst the gathering. I have not seen any stone herein. Please, not only MCOC Act, dear friends, every act is our friend. If we read it from top to bottom, if we read from the object of the act to its saving clause, it teaches us, it guides us. Friends, books are our real friends. Books are our guides. Books are our philosophers. We need not go to anybody to ask anything. Because if you ask me, I may commit a mistake. But you ask the book will not commit a mistake. Provided we read it, and we read it in proper manner. So, do friendship with the books, and we'll get a lot. Witness protection scheme is there. In-camera trials are provided for the protection of witnesses. Some measures the court can take to protect the witness, to gather the evidence. that part I need not elaborate because I find it not very much useful for you. I think I'm completing my gesture in time. I tried to elaborate some points. If I fell, please forgive me. If you could gather something which is of use, carry it and just enhance it. I'm very much thankful for the bar for inviting me here and giving an opportunity to address you. It is really a great thing for me. So much thank you for honoring me. Thank you. If anyone has any question to be asked which is not regarding any pending case, that too in my court, then you are welcome. If it is not in my court, very well, no issue.